welcome to Wrestling at Random. I'm Jeremy Deemer.
And I am Adam Summers.
And this is a new podcast where every week we'll review a classic pro wrestling event from a streaming service. That could be New Japan World, that could be WWE Network. Here's a little bit about how it's going to work. Okay, we're going to take a list of events and we're going to fire up the randomizer. So we're going to let a program just take this dump of every piece of content that's on these streaming services. It's going to shuffle them up, and at random, it's going to pick something. And it's going to pick an event, and Adam and I are going to watch and review the show.
Yeah, and when Jeremy says randomizer, this is going to be truly random. This isn't a deal where we say it's random and then we pick some wacky show to try to convince you that it's random. This is going to be as random as it gets. We're not going to have any idea what we are going to be watching until the randomizer makes its choice. So that could be great. It could be awful, but either way, it's going to be great because we're either going to be reviewing wrestling that we really enjoyed or wrestling that's really bad that we can make fun of. And so either way, I think it'll work out well.
Absolutely. It's guaranteed to be fun. We'll have a great time with it. And events, let's be clear about what an actual event is on this that we're putting into the randomizer. We're not just putting everything in there.
Yeah. Unfortunately, if you're looking for weekly TV from AWA 1988, this sadly won't be your show. But if you are looking for a Clash of the Champions, a Saturday night's main event, a Coliseum home video that is not a clip show of other pay-per-view matches, but includes original content. If you're looking for an ECW pay-per-view or one of the pre-pay-per-view ECW mega shows, that those are all in the mix. So yeah, no weekly TV, but if it's a show of importance or claimed importance, it's definitely in the running.
And we'll make sure to post on our social media what event that week's episode will cover. So you can feel free to watch it and listen to our review, or just listen to the review so you don't have to watch, but you can still relive classic wrestling memories with us.
Yes, and the plan as of now is that the shows will go up at the old pay-per-view time of Sundays at 6 p.m. Central Time. We are both in the Chicago area, so we're going Central Time. You're going to have to deal with that. But yeah, the plan is for the shows to go up around that time, and then yeah, you will be able to. I would recommend watching beforehand, but you don't have to because believe me, we will be taking copious notes for you, because yeah, a lot of these the shows themselves will be interesting, and the stories and the time frame with which these shows happened in will also be a lot to examine there.
Absolutely. So let's give a quick introduction about who we are. We've told you about what the show is. Now let's tell you who we are. My name, again, is Jeremy Deemer. I host a Chicago Cubs podcast called Wrigleyville Nation, and I have been a lifelong wrestling fan. My first memories of wrestling date back to Steamboat and Savage during an Event Center segment where they were recapping how Steamboat had a crushed larynx, and I was immediately hooked and I was captivated. And 88, 89, that became a big NWA, WCW time for me as we got cable, and I got the Superstation. I got big into NWA and WCW as well. And much like Adam, my introduction to Japanese wrestling was the Starrcade Tokyo Dome show. And learning all about Japanese wrestling, I was very interested in that. But it was in 92, and that's when I actually, late 92, I kind of dropped out of watching wrestling and didn't come back till 1996 when the NWO and Hall and Nash invading Nitro was all the talk, and so that kind of brought me back in, and I've been a hardcore fan ever since. Traveled to many WrestleManias. Adam and I were both at the Madison Square Garden Ring of Honor and New Japan Super Show, so been a hardcore fan ever since, and I'm sure you have a similar tale, Adam.
Yeah, definitely a little bit similar, maybe a little bit different, but my earliest memories of wrestling are watching watching Mid-South and World Class with my dad as a very young child living in New Orleans. I was born in the Chicago area, but at less than a year old, we moved to New Orleans. And so the wrestling that was on TV then, at least that I was aware of as a small child, it wasn't WWF. It wasn't even, NWA on TBS, Mid-Atlantic, Georgia Championship Wrestling, anything like that. It was World Class with the Von Erichs and Bill Watts Mid-South. So that's the type of stuff I grew up on. When we moved back to Chicago in the mid to late 80s, there was no more Mid-South or World Class to watch on TV, and I immediately gravitated to watching the NWA on TBS because it was a lot of the guys I was familiar with, and it was just much more of a similar presentation of wrestling that I was familiar with and enjoyed. That being said, wrestling hooked me from a very young age, so I still watched WWF. I had guys like Bret Hart, Mr. Perfect that were my favorites, but the emotional attachment was always elsewhere. Contrary to Jeremy, I did not drop off in the early to mid 90s. So, I guess I'll have some of those things I'll have seen that Jeremy won't have, but I will say that the closest I ever came to quitting watching wrestling, which never would have happened, but was probably, 2003 when WCW had died, ECW had died. And I had yet to find, IWA Mid-South when they first started coming to Chicago. That was kind of what hooked me back to going to live shows. And like Jeremy said, with Japan, that is the reason you're hearing my voice right now, because, I've been doing a podcast been doing podcasts about Japanese wrestling for 15 years. The one that I'm doing currently, the Adam and Mike Big Audio Nightmare at WrestlingObserver.com. I've been doing for just over 14 years with Mike Sempervive. And that, current day, that is by far where my love of pro wrestling lies, is Japanese wrestling. Like Jeremy said, the days of the Great Muta, Jushin Liger showing up in the NWA and later WCW, that's what hooked me on that front. So yeah, we'll get into a lot more about our wrestling origin stories. I'll keep it there for now, but yeah, definitely looking forward to getting going on this project.
Me too, and I want everyone who's listening to make sure that you follow us on Twitter and Instagram at WrestleAtRandom. You can also give us a like at facebook.com/wrestlingatrandom. And of course, the website is wrestlingatrandom.com. That will have the entire catalog of this podcast right here. Please rate, review, subscribe, and help others find our show. Tell your wrestling fan friends about us. We're going to rely a lot on word of mouth and you telling your friends about the show. So we really appreciate it. And with that, we're going to wrap up this trailer and look forward to episode 1. So roll right into it. And before we close, I do want to thank Devin Davis for supplying the theme song for this podcast. You can support him by heading over to his Bandcamp, devindavis.bandcamp.com, and download a copy of his album, Lonely People of the World Unite. So with that, we will talk to you with the next episode.
Definitely talk to you guys soon. Thanks for listening.